Welcome to the Clear Admit MBA Admissions Podcast. I'm Graham Richmond, and today's episode is part of a longtime listener favorite series of ours, which we call Admissions Director Q&A. And as you might imagine, for this series, we periodically sit down with admissions directors from leading MBA programs, and today I am pleased to welcome Emily Thomas from Columbia Business School. Emily, her title is Director of Admissions, and she has a rich history at CBS, working in academic programs and admissions over the past 13 plus years. She has an undergraduate degree from crosstown rival NYU and a master's in organizational psychology from Columbia. Welcome, Emily.
Hi, Graham. Thank you so much. It's wonderful to be here.
It's a pleasure to have you. So I want to dive in. As you know, we have a number of questions to kind of work our way through. But I wondered if you might first just take a minute to tell us about your background and just the path that led you to your current role at Columbia.
Absolutely. Well, my background is kind of a winding road, and I suspect some of our prospective students might appreciate this. But I went to NYU for theater school, so I had, done theater. I started a theater company in my early days. And then a friend of mine was working at Columbia and, talked about how wonderful the community was and just how interesting a place it was for kind of continual learning, like just a place where you would have access to all kinds of interesting speakers and things to do and discover. So I applied and I started working at Columbia Business School in the executive MBA programs, and the rest is history. I just really loved it, loved working with the students. Obviously got my master's here. I'm Columbia through and through now. So
got it. So I think you just hinted at this, but what is it that you like most about the work that you do now in MBA admissions? And maybe is there something that you dislike?
Yeah, I'd say that the work, MBA admissions is a wonderful place to really talk with people at this moment in their lives when they're making huge decisions. It's just this pivotal moment in people's lives. And I think being part of that and even helping to helping people think through what they want and why they want it and what place might be the best kind of, proving ground for them, the place that's going to give them the other people, the teammates, the skills, but also just the experiences that will help make them incredible in the rest of their lives. And so I feel it's a very special place being able to invite people into this community. And I love developing those relationships. I think, what I don't like, obviously there is the part of admissions where we can't let everyone in that we like. And that's something I actually have a hard time with. And so as I'm working with candidates and as I'm, reviewing files, I'm really looking for people who will do well at Columbia and where this is the right place for you and where this is the place where you're going to not only be able to make a difference, but you're really going to be able to grow here. And so that's how I get around it. But I've never liked saying no to people.
Yeah, that definitely difficult task. I totally agree with you that, people are at a really pivotal moment when they're often thinking about an MBA. And, even, I don't know if you listen to the Clear Admit podcast regularly, but we do a lot of things where we, kind of profile candidates and talk about their backgrounds. And I just find it so fascinating to just hear these journeys and, just where people have been and where they want to go. And so it's always new somehow. Like there's just such a variety of people that come into the MBA admissions process that I think keeps it interesting. But I agree, you're always kind of rooting for everyone. So it's hard to say no. All right. So give me a Columbia Business School stereotype that you would like to debunk.
I think the classic stereotype, there's something about sharp elbows or that we're not very collegial. And it's just the most wrong thing I've ever heard. Or that there's no community. I think there's an assumption, people watch movies about New York from the 80s or something like that. And they think that being at Columbia is going to be like, some weird stereotypical New York movie. And the reality is that it's an incredibly strong community. I know that not only our students, but our alumni will bend over backwards to help each other and to make sure that that people feel welcome, that people feel included. And it's a very collegial place. And also people think that they're not going to spend that much time on campus because everybody's going to be off in New York doing other things. And I got news for you. You're going to spend most of your time on campus because there's so much going on. You're going to be so busy that in a lot of ways you're just not going to, maybe even be able to take advantage of the fun stuff in New York for the first year at least.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. And that is something that you hear, right? And so I think it's great that you're speaking to that. And I think that it actually flows into this next question, or it might. And that was, I wanted to ask you about something new that's happening or will soon be happening on campus that you wish people knew more about. And I was thinking about your facilities.
Yeah, the big thing is we are moving to a gorgeous set of new buildings. So it's actually two beautiful big buildings called Manhattanville, or in Manhattanville, I should say, which is 5 or 6 blocks north of where our current campus is. And we are so excited. Graham, I can't even tell you, especially on the administration side. This is something that students don't realize, but my office, for example, is several blocks south of the main campus. So the business school just doesn't have enough room right now for all of the administrators to be in the same place. Obviously, this past year, no one's been in the same place, but we're really excited not only to be getting back to campus this year, but then once we're back in campus, we're actually going to be all together in our new buildings and, enough space for all of us. It's going to have a lot of really beautiful, kind of open spaces that are designed for people to run into each other and be able to sit down and collaborate with each other on things. There's a lot of very intentional work that's been done on the design of the building to reflect the collaborative nature of our program. And I think that is very cool. Much as I will miss walking through the very pretty old Columbia campus. It is a beautiful, beautiful campus, but we're excited for this kind of shiny new building that we're just so happy to have, and again, to just be all together.
Yeah, I'm excited. I mean, I've been sort of following along because I do remember when they announced, that this was coming, and, a lot of other business schools have opened up new buildings over the years. And so I think it's great. And I cannot wait to see the campus. Although the last time I was in your offices, I feel like, and now this could be completely off, but I feel like your offices for the admissions team were in the same building as the diner, the famous diner.
Tom's Diner. We will miss Tom's. Tom is a lovely, Tom's is a lovely kind of memory of the 90s television world.
Yes.
We also shared a building with, I don't know if I should say this, but we shared a building with NASA, which is kind of insane.
I remember that too, because I remember there was like security going in and I was kind of like, well, this is weird. I'm just going to like have coffee with somebody on your team. And, but yeah, then I saw the sign NASA. So government agency, I got it. But it does sound great. You guys are all going to be able to be together. And I cannot agree more. That's a huge thing coming. When is this happening? Like, when is that campus going to open in theory?
January. So so the administration starts moving in probably late this year just to get everything set up and ready. And then January, the students will be back on camp, back in the new building after the holiday break.
Excellent. All right. Well, that's exciting. So speaking of admissions and your offices and what goes on in those offices, can you walk me through the life of an application? I think that candidates know a lot about they're writing their essays, they're, putting everything together, and then they hit submit, and then they start to freak out because they realize they have no more control over what's happening. So what happens from the moment that the candidate hits submit until he or she gets that final decision?
Right. I know it can really feel like just submitting your life into a black hole, and it is not. I want to reassure people you are submitting your life into the hands of people who are very excited to read your application. So what happens, it will come into our system and then be assigned to an initial reader. So every application is read usually by a couple of people. Usually there's an initial reader, and then there's a second reader who tends to be a bit more senior, who's kind of looking at, did that initial reader make the right decision? And then hopefully you will get an invitation to interview. Sometimes at that point, between the two readers, or sometimes it's multiple readers. Every application gets multiple eyes, but sometimes we do things in a committee format. But obviously sometimes we can't interview everyone. So at that point, it might be the end of the application process for a particular candidate for this round. But for those who are invited to interview, then you will be given the name of an alum, usually in your area, and you'll set up the interview with that alum and get an opportunity to talk with them, ask them questions. I think you might be asking me about the interview a little bit more later, but that's a really important piece. And then when it comes back to us, we, again, will work in a committee format and just go through the feedback from the alumni. We'll sit and look again at the application and really think through, okay, I think this person is wonderful, or, we have questions still and we're not sure that this is going to work. So you usually get a final decision from the committee within a couple of weeks after the interview.
Okay. And from beginning to end, roughly, like how long does someone typically, from submitting to getting that final decision, if they're interviewed, what's the usual timeline?
Yeah, it depends a little bit on the time of year. If you're one of the people who's submitting on a deadline, the last day to submit, it might take a full 6+ weeks to review that application and then let you know if you're invited to interview. So the total could be, depending on how long how long you take to arrange that interview, it could be 8 weeks. It could, I've seen it be much faster. I've seen it, if someone takes a while to set up their interview, I've seen it take a little bit longer. So it's contracting, but 8 weeks is probably the rough estimate I would give most people.
Okay, that's helpful. So while we're talking about the application, I have to ask, if you had to give candidates one tip about the application essays, what would it be?
Yeah. I think my take is that the essays really are this incredible opportunity for you. And I think if you look at essays as an opportunity and not just as a box you have to check, that's going to be very helpful. This is a time in your life when it's all about you. You are making this decision. You get to explore what schools are going to be the right fit for you. You never know who you're going to meet in the MBA program, right? You could meet a future partner professionally. You could meet a future partner personally. You're going to meet people who are friends for life. I think you want to be yourself as much as possible and really answer those essays for you. Our first essay, we're asking you about your short-term and long-term goals. Just, really think about, what do you want in life? People aren't going to ask you this that many more times, right? So this is a prompt for you to really be reflective and take that time. In a weird way, I would say enjoy it. And I think the more that you enjoy really reflecting and answering those questions, the more you will be able to communicate your excitement and your interest in, hopefully Columbia, hopefully in whatever path you're looking to take. And even if you don't necessarily have that exact perfect answer to your long-term dream goal, I think taking the time to really think through, what is it that you're passionate about? What do you really like? What would you change in the world if you could? And does this have meaning for you? And do you have skills that could actually push you in that direction? So that's my advice, is just take the time and enjoy it.
Okay. Yeah, that's great advice. You mentioned the first essay question that you all have, which is, as you said, kind of a career goals type essay question. You also have kind of a sort of 3 questions that one has to pick 2. There's kind of So there's two other essay questions, or sorry, two other required essays, but they get to choose, right? And that list of choices has changed. So there's, I don't know if you want to talk about that for this year, because I know that you have a new essay that is really about diversity, equity, and inclusion in a way, right? And then there's a couple other choices in that same group. So do you want to just walk us through some of the changes and where they came from this year?
Yeah. So, I think one of the things that we were recognizing, this past year has been just a watershed year. I think certainly for the U.S., I would say for the world, in terms of recognizing, post George Floyd, recognizing all of the disparities in how people have suffered through the pandemic, just a real recognition of the inequality that, we've all tried to pretend didn't exist in the world, but of course it is still there, and there's still a lot of work to be done. And I think at Columbia, the reaction was to have a lot of very hard conversations. There is a diversity team, essentially faculty, staff, students, that got together and set up listening sessions. And I think their intention was to set up maybe, 5 or 6 listening sessions initially. They did over 40 listening sessions with students where they just opened the floor to hear from them, real, focus group style, just really hear how they've experienced the world, how they've experienced each other, how they've experienced school. And within this, I think we have always had the value of inclusion and wanting this to be the best place it can be for all of our students. We have a very diverse population, but I think that with these listening sessions, between the dean's office and the rest of the school, I think we all really came to the conclusion that this needs to be a core value that is front and center. And, it's obviously very much about diversity within the United States, but I think there have been sessions where people would tell stories about their home country and the disparities in their home country that, we as Americans maybe weren't even as aware of. And I think it's easy to make a lot of assumptions about, international communities being more homogenous, and the reality is no, there's diversity and there's disparity everywhere. So Part of this essay is to highlight a new program, which is the Phillips Pathway to Inclusive Leadership. And it's a really incredible program. It was created by 2 students. It's named for Kathy Phillips, she was an amazing professor, researcher, woman, and her research was all around the issues of diversity in teams. And she did a lot of the research that showed that diverse teams, when there's communication, when those team members have the tools to work with each other well, those diverse teams produce much better results, much more interesting results, better financial results for companies than homogenous teams. And I think, taking her lead, we named this after her. Unfortunately, she passed away last year. But it is an incredible, incredible program where all students who are going through CBS will essentially get this training, this exposure. And it has several focus points: creating an inclusive environment, mitigating bias, communicating across identities, addressing systematic inequity, and managing difficult conversations. So these are all topics where a manager, and frankly, a manager in any country, is going to have to be able to navigate these different points of diversity.
Right. Yeah, go ahead, sorry.
No, I was just going to say, so we wanted to make this part of our essay because we want to give our candidates the opportunity to highlight, if this is something that you are passionate about, and if this is something that you have an incidence of having to manage one of these areas of focus, we would really love to hear about it. And I think not everyone is going to have this focus, and that's okay. That's why it's optional. Essentially, our new essay structure, after doing the first essay, which is all about your goals, you have a choice of 3 essays for the remaining 2. Hopefully I said that clearly enough. But you're going to write 2 more essays. but there are 3 different essays that you can choose from. And one of them is this essay that focuses on the Phillips pathway for inclusive leadership. Another essay is about why Columbia, and that has essentially been our essay number 2 for years and years. And I think that's an opportunity for students who are really, if Columbia is your very best first top choice, this is where you absolutely want to be. That's an opportunity for you to highlight exactly why that is true and why you think you're a good fit for the school. And then the third essay, some people I think really want to make sure that we're getting to know them in a more human way. So we did keep our essay 3 from last year, which is about, your favorite book, movie, or song that you want to talk about. And I think of these 3 essays, I want to emphasize that our decision making isn't going to revolve around which essay you pick. It's really just opportunities for you to share yourself and really tell us who you are. So these are meant to be much more personal essays. The first essay is a little bit personal, I think, because your dream goal is a very personal thing, right? No 2 people have exactly the same dream. But the first essay also has that short-term goal, which is a little bit more tactical, right? Like that's more about who's going to be successful as they graduate from the MBA program. But these other 2 essays that you have these different options for, choose the option that fits you and that you feel good about, because that's going to help reflect you as a person best.
Yeah, so I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit, because I've seen people saying on the internet, on the message boards and things like, oh, if you're applying to Columbia, you have to answer the why is Columbia a good fit for you one, and given the current environment, you would be a fool not to talk about diversity, equity, and inclusion. So there's this rumor out there that oh, well, there are these 3 choices, but so I really want you to emphasize. I mean, it sounds like you're saying, no, whatever people want to write is fine. But I think people need to hear that, right? Because it sounds like, as usual, folks get up to developing theories around what ones they want. But you're given the choice. So it really doesn't matter to you all, it sounds like.
It really doesn't matter. And if you think about, and this is probably a good practice for your life, right? Put yourself in the position of the person reading your application. Yes, it's good for you to know why you want to come to Columbia. There are probably places in the first essay where you could emphasize that if you wanted to. We're going to see, if you've spoken to people at Columbia, we're going to, as you talk through what you're going to do in your goals, if you mention something that we see, oh, that is a very specific Columbia thing, I get it. They've done their homework. I think that you don't have to write a full essay on that.
Okay.
On the other hand, if 20 things you're going to do at Columbia, that might require a full essay. This is why I'm sort of emphasizing it's really about you, right? Every different person is going to have different enthusiasms, different parts of themselves that they really want to share. I think from our standpoint, we're putting out some of our values. And I'll be candid, to some degree, the application itself is a way for us to highlight things that are important to us. So, of course, it's important to us, why you want to come to Columbia, but there are other ways to talk about that. And we'll kind of see that in your application regardless. I think, yes, it's important to us that that we're doing this inclusive leadership program because we believe this is a selling point. We think that this is actually really going to empower our students to be able to navigate some very difficult waters as leaders when they graduate. And this is something that we are very proud of. So, of course, we want to highlight it. But if you don't have that particular situation that you can talk about yet, don't worry. You will get there. You will have that training and you will have those experiences in school, and that will be a great opportunity for learning for you. So if you don't have it yet, then you don't have to write that essay.
Okay.
And you can even, we'll see in your extracurriculars, maybe you've even been part of a club that is as an ally or as a member of a particular group, you don't always have to reflect the same thing in every single part of the application. It's really about you sharing who you are. And I'll be candid, put yourself in our shoes. The third essay in some ways it can be a little bit fun.
Right.
and I think for some people, that's something that they really want to express. And I actually feel like you can really get to know a person by knowing what books they care about, knowing what culture they consume. I think, movies and books and songs, all of this is really how we tell ourselves the stories of the world and how we tell ourselves the stories of our own lives. And so I actually think this can be very meaningful for people. And if it's very meaningful for you, I want to read something meaningful for you. I don't want to read something because you think that it's the one you're supposed to do.
Yeah, that's really good point. And I love that what you just said about the music and film and reading, because it used to be you could walk into someone's home and see shelves of books or a library of music or and now everything's streaming, and so it's a little harder to get at this stuff. So I think it's fun that you have this essay about it. This, I think, dovetails well. I wanted to ask about the admissions interview, and I think you were saying how earlier that you have all these different places where different aspects could come out, like your passion for Columbia could come out in that essay option, or it could come out a little bit in the first essay. I'm assuming it could come out in the interview as well, right? So tell me a little bit about the interview. What are you guys looking for? And it's all conducted by alumni that you said, right?
Yeah, for the most part, every once in a while, there will be interviews conducted either by current students. We have kind of a big fun interview day with current students sometimes.
Okay.
Obviously, this past year it was a little challenging. And sometimes it will be with an admissions officer. It doesn't really matter who it's with. The majority of them will be with alumni. And I think the way to think about it, the alum, they don't have a specific set of questions that they are supposed to ask. So it's going to be a conversation. It's a professional conversation. So keep that obviously in the back of your mind, but they're very broadly looking and thinking, would I have wanted this person on my learning team? And do I want this person in my alumni network? Is this person someone that I'm going to be excited to reach out to or excited to have reach out to me? Is this someone who I think has that leadership potential? And that's a little bit amorphous, but ultimately it comes down to, do you have some sort of focus as you're talking about your career? And you will end up talking about your career. I should say that the alumni don't get anything from us. So they don't see your application. They don't even get your resume. So you should send your resume to the alum who is interviewing you. And they will ask you about, what you have done in the past. They will ask you about what you're hoping to do in the future. It's a little bit that first essay piece. But they're really trying to gather from you information about, do you have a good feel for the industry you're looking to enter, if it's a new industry? Have you done your research? And again, I want to emphasize this because I think people get very intimidated by the idea that they have to know what they're going to do before they start the program. I would say about half of the students don't do what they said they were going to do in the essay. Now, do your best. If you think you want to do something, that's what you should put in the essay. But inevitably, you're going to meet people, you're going to take courses, and your focus may shift. My thought has always been that if you have a structure and you've done some homework on a particular path, it's actually fairly straightforward to then shift that path to something slightly different. You understand that process of doing the research and picking the path. So in an interview, what you're demonstrating is that you know what you're talking about a little bit, right? You're demonstrating to some degree emotional intelligence. I think that there is a very important piece of leadership that is communication, and that is the ability to talk with people and be engaging. And so a good practice tip, this is my former colleague Bob Shea used to give this tip out. Before your interview, talk to people. It's actually as simple as that, but have a few conversations with people. and feel comfortable in your story. And that's a great way to prepare for an interview. It doesn't mean you have to practice and have a script. That actually doesn't work very well. But if you just have that momentum of having talked with some people, whether it's a colleague or even a good friend, then you'll be in a good position to just have a good conversation.
Yeah, I think, first of all, I appreciate you underlining the fact that the person interviewing doesn't have the file. Like, that's really important for people to understand. And I think sometimes it's hard when you're the candidate to know that, okay, I get to sort of step back and like tell my story. It's like hard to disassociate the fact that you've already told your story to the admissions team, and then you're sitting down with a representative who's going to interview you, and you kind of have to really step back and understand that they don't know your story. But I also think it's a great opportunity to just, to share and to highlight different aspects of your background. And so I think your advice is good too. The number of candidates we see who, it's almost like they want to script it all out. And that's just really dangerous, because you never end up sounding like you're you. You just sound like you're, reading from lines or something. So you've got to be able to, but I think practicing is great in terms of talking with others. So that's terrific advice. I got to ask you this question about early decision versus the sort of regular decision round, because Columbia is this, a program that you all have this early decision round. Do you want to talk about that? And you are somewhat unique among the very top schools in terms of having an ED round. So what advice do you have to someone who's sort of not sure yet, am I applying to Columbia early or am I applying in the regular round?
Yeah. So the early decision round is, and one point I failed to make earlier that I want to highlight here, we actually have rolling admission, which also makes us very different from most of the other schools. And right. It means that when you apply, we are able to read your application and render decisions fairly quickly. We're not doing it on a specific timeline. So at the beginning of the process, we have more seats. And at the end of the process, we have fewer seats. So there is, and we read all of the early decision applications as they come in, but we read those before we start reading regular decision applications, even if those regular decision applications came in September, for example. Now, that is the timeline I gave you before. The folks who have a much longer timeline are folks who are applying before the early decision application deadline, but they're applying for regular decision. We generally don't start reading those applications until the end of November, just so you know.
Right. Okay.
But so part of the advantage, I would say, of early decision is that we are reading you a little bit earlier. But it's not, I don't think it's a measurable advantage. We're admitting most of the people we admit through the regular decision process. Early decision is really a way for you to, declare loud and clear that we are your first true love, right? You know that you want to come to Columbia, and there aren't other things, a partner's job move, financial thing. There aren't other things kind of getting in your way to saying yes to us. Because if you're admitted early decision, then we ask you to withdraw your applications from other schools and commit to us. It's kind of, this is a very crass way to talk about it, but if you think about it a little bit like dating, it means we're going steady, right?
Right.
We are exclusive if you are applying early decision and you're admitted that way. But, from the admission standpoint, one of the reasons we do it, we tend to find people who are going to be culture carriers in the early decision round, people who are really going to be cheerleaders for the school. You're kind of all in if you know from the get-go that Columbia is where you want to be. And not all of our students are going to be that, but it's a very important pool of students for us. And I think it makes the experience for the rest of the class very, very positive to have those people in the mix. And so that's one of the reasons why we have the early decision round is to identify some of those students. In terms of, this is one thing that comes up a lot for people. A lot of people hesitate to apply early decision even if they know they want to come early decision because they're afraid that they won't get a fellowship. And I just wanted to note that about half, it's sort of split half and half. So roughly the same percentage of people in early decision are getting fellowships as the percentage of people who are applying by our fellowship deadline, which is in early January. And most people, just to put this out there, most people will apply by that early January deadline for the merit-based fellowship. And we're talking really just primarily about the August entry students. The timeline's a little bit different for our January entry students because they applied by October. Mm-hmm. And we don't have an early decision round for January. It's just that one date that you have to apply by. But for August entry students, I would say probably most of the August entry applications that come in at some point during that last day, when the deadline for the merit-based fellowship, right? Human nature is what it is, and we know that most people do things a little bit more at the last minute. If you can get ahead of that specific curve, if you can apply, say, November, then you are ahead of this giant wave that comes into our application pool, and we are reading you before that giant wave. So there's a little bit of an advantage to being, submitting your application a bit earlier, but you don't have to submit early decision in order to get a spot.
Okay. Yeah, that makes sense. A lot to consider for folks, but I think you did a great job of describing like when someone might want to do early decision, and also, super advice about even in the regular round, maybe not waiting for the last minute to be part of the giant wave. I know that you guys have a deferred enrollment program too for kind of, for college students who are thinking of, heading off to business school eventually and want to like lock in their spot. Like, is there any advice there? Like, who is the right candidate? If someone's tuning in and they're in college now and they're thinking, well, I'm going to go work, but should I first apply to business school and do this type of a program? Like, who's it for really?
Yeah, I think it's for a lot of different people. In some ways, just look, this past year, we saw the world turn completely upside down. And I think in some ways, it's for the people who like to have a little bit of security in their back pocket. I think the idea of having the admission to, a great business school and knowing that that's an option for you, you can go and do that. Should things fall apart, or should you get to, I think for more people, you get to that point in your early career where you realize, okay, I've got some experience under my belt. I now know what I like, what I really don't like. I have a little bit more of a focus. I think I can really take advantage of the MBA. It's essentially for people who are organized enough in college that they are already thinking about this to some degree. And I'll be candid, from an admission standpoint, part of the reason we do the deferred enrollment program is actually to get in front of those college students earlier and kind of help them think about this, plant this little seed in their mind, whether they're applying deferred enrollment or not, but planting the seed in their mind that there are a lot of different, very interesting people who will come to business school. They may be in social enterprise. Maybe they were an engineer in undergrad and they really enjoy that engineering piece, but now they're looking to start a company. Or, maybe they are really looking to do consulting from something like engineering or from, some other political science, whatever it is. I think, a lot of the people who do end up applying early decision will have a little bit of that kind of drive and focus already in college. They have that understanding of what an MBA can do for them, either because they have a mentor, or they've seen other people, or maybe they've been part of a business club in college. But I want to emphasize, you don't have to have a business undergrad degree in order to do a deferred enrollment program. That's not, we're not really looking for just one type of candidate. We're definitely looking for a variety of different people to come into the program. It's a great program. I just love it. And I think it does give people a little bit more flexibility, not a huge, vast wave of flexibility in their early career. But, for example, if you're thinking, I want to work for a small startup, but I don't know if it's going to work out, you can take a little bit more risk I think knowing that you're then going to be able to go to business school, and I've seen it with some of the people we've admitted over the past couple of years. I've seen them make slightly different decisions, just knowing that they had this kind of plan in place. So
Yeah.
that's something to consider. I think there are benefits, and you do get access to, the other people who have been admitted to the deferred enrollment program. There's a nice social group for that population. You also just get a little bit more access to Columbia. You get more access to some of the events we have on campus and, speakers. And I think that helps start to guide your thinking about a particular industry.
Yeah, I'm envious just because I remember, these programs didn't exist when I went to business school. And so I remember, graduating from college into the unknown of the workforce. And I knew at some point that I might want to go to business school, but, there's all this uncertainty. And so I think it is, I don't know, part of me finds it really appealing, this idea that as a college student, you can sort of secure your spot in business school. And then, like you said, go off and have your early career, which could be a traditional thing or could be, taking some risks because you're able to do that. You don't have to worry as much. So yeah, it just seems like a great opportunity. I'm glad that more and more schools are offering this kind of thing. So very interesting. So those were all the main questions I had. Now, as you know, we like to do this kind of lightning round of fun questions with all of our admissions director Q&As. And so if you're game, I want to pepper you with a whole set of sort of fun questions to let our listeners kind of get to know you a little bit. So if you're okay with that, let's dive in.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's go for it.
All right. So coffee or tea?
Tea.
Beach or mountains?
Mountains.
Okay. Morning person or night owl?
Probably
Both?
night owl. Both. I have a toddler, so, more morning person than maybe I want to be these days, but yeah.
That's what I was thinking when I used to be kind of a night owl and then had kids and then was forced to become a kind of a morning person, but I'm still a night owl too, so it's not a great combination.
Yeah.
But yeah, so it's a juggle. Okay, what is a pet peeve that you have?
Oh, this is a hard one because I think I'm pretty easygoing. I don't love clocks that are very loud. So in a room that's quiet, a clock that's very loud will drive me a little bit nuts.
Okay, that's a good one. I'm laughing just because my father has a collection of those grandfather clocks.
Oh, wow.
So I'm thinking to when I go and visit my parents, there is that ticking, but it's not like a annoying bomb ticking sound. It's more of a old mechanical sound. But
yeah.
it's you probably shouldn't go to my parents' house if you're ever invited.
Fair enough.
So, all right. What's a guilty pleasure that you have?
Oh, cheese, dairy product. Yeah.
Okay. Awesome. You know that I'm based in Paris, so there's
I
no
do.
end to the selection here. If that's the one thing I think if I ever move back to America, it's going to be challenging to not be able to have unpasteurized, Camembert cheese.
Oh, yeah.
Favorite virtue in others?
Curiosity. I think it goes hand in hand with listening and kind of caring, but genuine curiosity about other people.
Okay. What's your happy place?
Story time with my son.
Cool. Yeah, reading stories is a blast. Comfort food besides cheese or tea?
Well, I was going to say mac and cheese.
That's not bad.
Just adding some carbs to that cheese.
Okay. Excellent. That's something, that's, there are restaurants that devote themselves now to different types of mac and cheese, I feel like, at least in America. It's a big thing with comfort food, right?
Yeah, no, it's absolutely true. I remember when I was in school, there was a whole restaurant in New York that was dedicated to peanut butter and jelly sandwiches. And I was just like, why would you ever go to a restaurant for that? But they were very good, so.
Interesting.
Things about New York that are funny, yeah.
Yes. What's your proudest moment?
This is, as a mom, I don't like to harp on, just this one personal element, but I think that there are moments with my kid where, I'll see him doing something and I'm like, oh my gosh, he's doing that thing I taught him. He was, we have a little cleanup song And all by himself, he started singing the cleanup song and putting some toys away. And I hadn't said anything. And I think this might be my, certainly these days, I think this might be my proudest moment. I'm sure there are wonderful professional moments I have, but this is sort of, where my brain is at this particular point in time.
You're gonna have to give me the song, because I think I need to play it for my own kids, because that's not a strength around here.
I will sing it to you. It's clean up, everybody everywhere. Clean up, everybody do your share is are the words to the song.
Excellent. What's your biggest regret?
Oh, I don't have a ton of regrets. I think all the really important decisions in my life I feel really good about. There are regrets with things like I gave up playing piano when I was 14. Like that's, I kind of am sad about that every once in a blue moon. Or regrets about, small personal conversations with parents or things like that. But I think for the most part, I'm pretty happy with where I am. Try not to look backwards too much.
Okay. All right. Well, this next one's a little bit about looking backwards too, but what's one thing you would change about how you were raised?
That's a hard one. Maybe less dairy. I think my mother was she made phenomenal food. I think that we did not all of our travel was very grandparent focused when we were little kids. And, I think when I did get the opportunity to travel internationally, it was really incredible and very eye-opening and something that I was so excited by. And so I think that, maybe going on a little bit more, getting the opportunity to do more international travel would have been nice. That said, I also appreciate that I got to know my grandparents really well, so.
Yeah, it's a tough trade-off.
And it's a privileged kind of, wish, right? Like having the resources to do all of that.
Makes sense, yeah. What's a superpower that you wish you had?
Teleportation.
Okay.
We travel a lot. Teleportation.
Yeah.
Would be great.
Fair.
I like being in the place. The flight, not so much.
Yeah, I agree with you there. Okay, so when you applied to college or master's, I don't know if you applied to multiple schools, but if you applied to multiple schools for college, did any reject you? And if so, does that do you think about that when you're having to say no to people?
So this is a really hard answer for me because I did not get rejected, and not because I got in everywhere, but I applied actually at the time, early decision to NYU. And Columbia was the org psych program was the one master's program that I applied to and I got in. So I've been very lucky and gotten a lot of yeses in my life. That said, I have had rejection in other parts of my life, and I do think about that when I am reading applications. I think there is so much that the applicant is putting into the form, the piece of paper. It really is, I'm sure, I know from when I applied, it feels like you're putting yourself into, however many pages of work, and that someone really is holding your life in their hands. And I think that I appreciate that, and I feel very honored by it, and I think we all do on the admissions team. And knowing that we are reading to admit, we want you to get in, and if you don't, then it's possible that you can reapply. There are ways that you're able to kind of show your interest or re-examine whether or not you were clear about why you want to come to Columbia, or why an MBA is going to be a good fit for you.
Mm-hmm. Makes sense. So while we're talking about that, is there a part of the Columbia Business School admissions process that you would like to skip if you were having to apply today?
I would probably want to skip the test. I think that might be what most people say. I think it's important, and I definitely hear from, especially folks who've been out of school for a little bit before they're taking the test, that it does remind them what taking a test is, and that is a skill that you forget quickly and will be good for you once you're back in school, because there are, of course, tests in the core. I think it's reminding yourself how to have that discipline of, working the math, especially. But yeah, no, I don't know that. I mean, there may be some people who really love test taking, but I am not one of them.
Okay. And the last lightning round question is kind of in honor of a question that you all ask in your application, and that is, what's the best thing that you've read, watched, or listened to recently?
I love that. So I have been, of course, watching a little bit of television while doing the quarantining with everybody. Can't really go outside. Right. Son is in bed, and then we're able to put on a little bit of television. I've been watching a lot of a show called Edwardian Farm, and stay with me here. It's basically these historians, I think one of them is an archaeologist, that kind of, quote unquote, goes back in time and essentially lives this farm experience. They become farmers with the technology and the kind of requirements of a specific time period. And it's actually really fascinating to watch all of the things that go wrong, and you get this incredible sense of how what a delicate balance life was in days without, really advanced technology for things like farming. And frankly, I think, for some industries still, life can be a very delicate balance, and there's a lot that can go wrong when you're dealing with livestock and plants and things like that. So I think also as a city girl, like watching this farming, this historical farming show has been weirdly fun. So I highly recommend it if anybody's, just super nerdy and wants to see some gardening on a big scale.
Cool. Yeah, that sounds really interesting, actually. I will check it out. Is it on BBC or something? Or no, it's not.
I got
British
it through Amazon Prime. I think it probably was BBC originally. It's very British. Yeah.
It has that vibe to it. Okay. So you have been incredibly patient, and I appreciate you taking all this time to share a little bit about yourself, but also just such great advice across all aspects of, life at Columbia Business School and, the application process. So thank you so much, Emily, for making time to chat today.
Oh, my pleasure. Thank you so much, Graham. It's been an absolute joy to chat with you and really, really fun. Thank you.
All right. So everyone stay tuned. We have more admissions directors Q&As coming up. And thanks again to Emily for making time for us, and we'll see you all real soon.